What's going on, everyone? We are continuing our trek through the Alabasta arc. Now, last video we sort of broke down the political situation in Alabasta with the old crocodiles and the dance powder. And I remember when I used to dance when my hips weren't like they are now. A pile of dust. I don't know what accent that was. Anyways, moving on, in this video, we dive into some of the more personal relationships affected by this war in Alabasta, like with Vivi and Cobra, and we get a lot of world building, especially in the desert, but we get a lot of fun Baroque Works lore too, so let's pick back up from the last video in this hot and harsh desert of Alabasta with the Straw Hats. But wait, there's more! Gamer Subs is an incredible partner, my favorite to be exact, and you guys seem to absolutely adore it too. So if you want 10% off all your orders for Gamer Subs, hit the link in the pinned comment or description and pick yourself up something on my dollar. I promise you'll love it. Thank you for your support, and thank you to Gamer Subs for being an incredible partner. Just like Ace's piece of paper, which has nothing on it, but supposedly will bring them all back together. While the crew is curious, Luffy just sort of shrugs it off and gets Nami to sew it into his hat. And you better bet this is 100% leading to a really satisfying moment where Luffy is gonna be like, "Crocodile, you have driven me to the edge. Now it is time. Trace on." And then Luffy slices Crocodile in half. Yeah, anyway, moving on. Another thing I noticed is that Nami is nice. She sewed the note into his hat for nothing. Good job, Nami. Though, since they are going to be in the desert where the sun is going to be beating down on them, Vivi hands them and pretty much the rest of the crew clothes, which are like robes. These thick clothes are actually meant to protect their skin from the harsh UV rays because in Alabasta, it can get up to 120 degrees in the desert alone. And think about it, because the entire country is like a desert. This is much to the chagrin of Sanji, who is a dirty simp. Dirty. So, they make it to the edge of the island, the bank of the Sandora River. Thankfully, Vivi drew a map, though maybe it was Nami? The reason is because isn't Nami supposed to be the cartographer, but like Vivi is delivering the dialogue here? Weird stuff, but their goal is to head to the oasis town of Yuba to talk to their leader of the rebels. Or kick his ass, depending which member you are, though it won't be easy as there are 700,000 rebels there they could potentially have to fight, according to Zoro. However, Vivi's response is quite interesting. Vivi implies that Baroque Works has done a number on Yuba and that they've made their people suffer. Yeah, my guess is that the rebels aren't much of a massive fighting force of people, you know, at least of the way that I thought when I first read it. This leads to a great moment where Vivi, she shrugs her shoulders, lowering her head, and declares that she'll stop the violence and rid Alabasta of Baroque Works once and for all. This actually fires up the Straw Hats, giving them a wind of courage. And it was just really nice art, honestly. On the flip, Crocodile and Miss All Sunday discuss the arrangements they made to have all of the officer agents of Baroque Works convene at 8 o'clock at Spider Cafe. Turns out, this is the headquarters of Baroque Works, and you wouldn't think it with the old Western look that it has. Centipedes and 33 RPM record players and all. Though, this is fair warning to all watching. Get ready, because we're introduced to the pair of Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas. And as well, Pola. Who, good God, where's her ribcage? Well, besides the lack of a ribcage and patrons, Pola is the proprietor of this fine establishment. She also knows their orders. Miss Merry Christmas likes orange pakoi, and Mr. 4, apple tea. In other words, they're fucking old. Even Miss Merry Christmas is nagging Pola to hurry up while she just kind of straight up ignores her, as would I. Likely because she's focusing on not snapping in half due to the lack of a proper ribcage. Though I think we may need to take Miss Merry Christmas out back because, wow, the balls on this lady to just be that mean. They then hear a sonata start to play in the distance, which is just Mr. 2 Bon Clay with, you know, his entourage. Okay, pardon me for a second. I realize I have a review to do, but what in just the hell is happening? What is going on? This is just the craziest thing I've ever typed out. And I've typed a lot. Oh boy, I've typed so much. So, Bon Clay sings his sonata about how the world is made for men and women, but when you're him, you're a man and a woman, which is why he's the strongest. Oh yeah, he is. He's the strongest. Oh, come his way. So he arrives, even saying, "How do you do?" which is a nice pun, and asks for octopar, or if you're illiterate like me apparently, an octopus parfait. Though I will admit, he called Miss Merry Christmas an old bat, which is apt and very funny, so good on him. So pretty much you're all awaiting for Mr. One and his partner to come along, so to pass the time, Bon Clay just decides to twirl, which makes Miss Merry Christmas dizzy, so she wants him to stop, which I say, don't! Let the old bat get dizzy. Though, Mr. One finally arrives, crashing through the cafe with a kanji on his chest that says one. So I think this confirms the long-running rumors. This is the author of Mob Psycho 100 and One Punch Man in the flesh. This leads into Bon Clay, for some reason, fighting Mr. One using Swan Arabesque, only for Pola to come and break up the fight, revealing that Pola is actually named Miss Doublefinger. And just in time. Their orders have been given. They are to go to Rain Base, the town of dreams, so that they may go meet the boss, the face of which they have yet to see. You may be wondering, see, buddy, you just spent a good chunk talking about one chapter. And yes, you are right, my dear. So, we are introduced to Bunchy, aka the Special All-Terrain Transport Turtle Baroque Works, or Satbois. So, as Satbois is heading to their location, we learn that the Unluckies never came back. So, they dispatched the substitutes. You know them, you love them, ladies and gentlemen, the Lizard Runners. Back with the good guys, Luffy and the Straw Hats finally arrive at the green city of Eru Malu, which is in total ruin. Buildings left to rot, some covered in sand, truly a city capsized by the wastes of the desert. 50,000 people used to live here, and now it's a ghost town. Except for this little critter that they call a Kung Fu Jugon. And I must reiterate, yes, still, all of this is real. I'm not making up, I'm not hallucinating, I'm not having a fever dream, maybe. Usopp gets beat up by a seal that knows Kung Fu. At this point, I'm not convinced that Oda is writing this. It may just be Araki. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Oda wasn't even real. Though, Luffy is able to defeat it, much to Vivi's dismay. But, as is the code dictates, this Kung Fu Jugon is now forced to, air quotes forced, to become the apprentice of Luffy, meaning Luffy now has a seal who knows Kung Fu, as an apprentice. But not just one, seemingly all of the Kung Fu Jugon are now Luffy's apprentices. Once again, I ask, does this not seem like Araki to essentially have a person beat up or harm animals and then claim them as their own apprentices? No way Oda exists. This is all Araki. This is all some brilliant scheme, though I will admit, Luffy gave a lot of food to the Jugon to have them not follow him, which is, you know, if this were full power Araki, he'd have Luffy use Hamon to eat the flesh of their faces or something. Hey, while we're here, check out my JoJo's Bizarre Adventure videos. They're pretty good. I made like 20 of them after all. Oh, and by the way, if you don't do that, I'll probably eat your flesh too, so watch them. Though, there is some Kung Fu Jugon lore. They actually live in the sea, not the desert. This is because long ago, the Sandora River was much more thriving, but as of late, it's not been doing so well, drying up a good bit due to being taken out over, well, by the sea. So the Kung Fu Jugon appeared from seawater, meaning it's not usable to drink. However, the reason the city of Eru Malu has become so desolate is because there just isn't enough rainfall to nourish it. So the town of Green has now become a town of hyperactive Mad Lad seals. Chopper then, well, brings up, hey, the port was looking good, but that's because Nenohana gets its water from the Oasis of Kateria. Though, surprisingly for a majority of Alabasta's history, it never suffered from drought. Even one place in particular got a lot, the capital of Alabasta, Alubarna. Holding the king's palace about 2 years prior in Nanohana, a fledgling drops a shipment of none other than dance powder. Dance powder, however, does not make you, bust some moves or tap your toe. It actually summons the rain like a white soapstone. The
Powder was invented because the inventor came from a country of no rain. Go figure. So I'm guessing we're gonna go there eventually, right? Anyways, the powder rises up into the sky where it triggers ice particles to grow and then fall like rain. In other words, as Vivi puts it, artificial rain. This is by far my most vivid memory of One Piece as a kid. I actually will never forget Dance Powder, and while it's the only thing I remember from when I was a kid about One Piece, it's as iconic to me as, say, driver's lessons in Dragon Ball Z. Bad example, but iconic nonetheless. However, there wasn't much jolly cooperation as they figured out the main side effect of using Dance Powder is that the areas surrounding where it was used sort of go into a dry spell of sorts, causing drought. So, once people realized what was happening, the world government banned production of Dance Powder, and as well, an all-out attack happened on the king, Vivi's father. Though this was actually all just a plan by Crocodile. Cobra had no clue any powder was placed inside the kingdom. In other words, it was a trap. Crocodile used this to incite a rebellion by making them lose faith in their just king, bringing out countless deaths and misery to Alabasta. This is why Vivi will never forgive Crocodile, and good on her. It can be easy to just sit back and watch all of this war and rebellion happen, knowing all along your father is innocent in all of it. That the true man behind it all is actually the man people cheer and swoon over in the streets. Honestly, I'd be sickened if I went through that, so I don't blame Vivi for what she's feeling. Even Luffy, after hearing this, seems determined to get to Yuba now to stop Crocodile. Which makes sense. Luffy just can't sit by and watch such injustice occur. However, he can cook, as that's what the heat of the sun does to the crew of the Going Merry. Even Chopper is dying, after all he's a reindeer covered in fur. However, Vivi is quite acclimated to it all. After all, she has lived in Alabasta pretty much her whole life. She also drops even more lore tidbits on Alabasta. Turns out what they're headed through is an ancient desert, and that the biggest dunes within it are 1,000 feet. Which, as Usopp puts it, yeah, that's a mountain. After Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji get into a tuffle about how much water Luffy decides to gulp down, they all decide once they get to the next crag, they'll take a break and eat something. As they spot the next crag and instant transmission to it, they come across herons that steal all of their food because Luffy. These are called evil herons. Very apt, and they basically act dead so they can steal supplies from the people who travel across the desert. However, they lost 3 whole days of food to Luffy on top of the Kung Fu Jugon and that gigantic sip he took. I gotta say, seeing the evil heron drink their water while teasing them is rather humorous. Luffy decides actually to chase after them, which leads to them confronting and swiftly defeating a gigantic Sandora dragon. They even use some rocks that are so hot to naturally cook the meat. So, I guess the thing about them being totally out of supplies isn't that true anymore. Also, Chopper found a pervert camel who only likes it when women ride him. I said that. Nami names it Eyelashes, because Nami is great at naming conventions, and the lads introduce themselves as idiot, moron, and jerk respectfully. They're also good at naming conventions. Also, Luffy eats a wild cactus, which gets him really high, but that's okay. Chopper actually uses gum sedative, or rather, Luffy is saying gum as he's about to use an ability, and Chopper just cuts him out and says sedative. And as the day turns to night and it gets well below freezing, which by the way is true in the real world, this happens to real deserts. I know, I watched Survivor Man. They spot something in the distance. Yuba. But something, oh boy, something's wrong. Yuba Oasis is being hit by a sandstorm and has dried up. There, they meet a man named Toto who tells them about the city's predicament as well as their hospitality and what they're famous for, inns. However, his reactions get strong when Luffy asks about the rebels and starts throwing things at him. Turns out, the rebels have left Yuba, which is shocking to say the least. Even more shocking is that this isn't the first sandstorm to hit Yuba. It's been happening for 3 years. But now, the rebels' base is Rio. So far, it really seems as if Crocodile has done a real number on Alabasta. He's flipped the entire country upside down and sowed chaos within it. It really feels as if Alabasta has been destroyed to a certain extent. Almost like this is some sort of post-apocalyptic arc you'd read in some other manga or series. You can feel the desperation of the people, even when the man realizes that Vivi is Princess Vivi. He starts to weep. He can't believe she's still alive and that the king still has not betrayed them all. He still believes. He never lost hope. So he begs, crying, to stop the rebels and put an end to the rebellion. And she'll have to, because she is their only hope. This leads into a flashback to 11 years ago when Vivi was a child. We see a villager, Koza, confront the king and beg the question, why didn't he save their village from drought? Obviously, he responds that he cannot control the weather. This is when a younger and rounder Toto makes his entrance to make his son apologize. This leads to Cobra to give the villagers aid, though he himself is actually quite impressed with Koza and tells Toto Koza is a fine boy for standing up to him, the king, for his fellow villagers. Still, he gives the villagers aid despite the kingdom not exactly being able to give that kind of support. In other words, he's a good king. Koza eventually does run into Vivi, who calls him a crybaby and gets into a fight. And lost. Good job of making friends, Vivi. Though this fight may be a good thing, as this earns the respect of Koza, and so he grants her second in command of the Sand Band. All the while, the king and Igaram look on, trying to be secret, but not really. Like, just imagine these people looking on and seeing the king of Alabasta in a do-rag with some branches, thinking that's the perfect disguise. That man is just too good-natured. But I mean, it seems to be in the family to a degree, as people find it strange that Vivi just wanders around into peasants' homes and such. It really does feel like this family are the leaders of this country, but are one with their people. Vivi even more so than her father, which is wild to think about considering how friendly and nice he seems to be. Though, this obviously isn't exactly great either, as this means people can and will easily go after Vivi, which is exactly what happens. These new goons here are planning to hold Vivi for ransom. So the Sand Band brandish arms and fight the treasonous thugs. They all fail their attack, and so Vivi flees to the ruins with Koza still pursuing. Koza there actually defends Vivi against a thug with a sword of all things, and he won't even back down, even when Vivi tells him to. Surprisingly, Koza does take a slash to the face, but still is able to knock out the thug and save Vivi just before more thugs intervene. Igaram and Cobra then knock them all out, and Cobra maybe goes a little too far, but to be fair, if I was the father of Vivi, I'd go as far. Little Vivi is, must be protected, okay? We make sure she's perfectly okay, happy, and well-fed, and raised right. Back at the palace, something really amazing happens. Vivi talks about how she was scared, but not because of those thugs, but because she didn't want them to die for her. She says it in the most adorable, innocent way ever. She just says, "I don't want you guys to die for me, Chief." Literally, little Vivi is a better person than nearly every adult I have ever met. How is this possible? Which in of itself may be a problem. Igaram is worried that Vivi may have too much of a soft heart to make the tough decisions, but Cobra says this is a good thing. Oh, I gotta say, Igaram brought up a good point here. While it's great that Vivi is so kind, she also really does need to be able to make those tough decisions. I think we may see something happen in the future where Vivi needs to make that tough call where nobody wins, but if a decision isn't made, it would be even more catastrophic. What that is, we shall see. Though, a lot of good came from this, as Koza's father was asked to build the city of Yuba, as many traders passed through Yuba. In other words, the crossroads of Alabasta's desert. Koza is excited for this, even choosing to leave the kingdom and play his part. Though, I'll be honest, while Vivi didn't cry or feel sad, it's just sort of sad in general to see Vivi and Koza part. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me who feels that way. But seeing two really good friends like this part just sort of, well, sucks. Back in the present, Toto tells them in tears of how many times he tried to stop them from rebelling, but couldn't make a difference. And the next battle will decide everything as they've been driven into a corner. As Toto puts it, they're ready to die. In Kataria Oasis, we see a city ready to wage war as a now grown up and rather handsome Koza says the kingdom has gone to the dogs. Wow, holy crap, this may be one of my favorite stretches of chapters I've read in One Piece, and we only end up talking about 5 chapters in total. I'm so hyped. I loved all of the insane amounts of world building they did for Alabasta. I love the backstory for Vivian Koza and the amount of emotion in Toto's face. Mwah! I'd say good job to Oda, but let's be real, it was Araki who deserves the credit. My theory about Koza is this. He's been driven into war, and he now is living a very hardened life as a rebel. I do think that Vivi will be able to save the rebels and probably will intervene in their battle, maybe even stop it altogether.
Either way, I think we've come to the end of yet another Alabasta video, and big news, I am taking next Monday off for One Piece videos. Instead, part 3 will pick up the week after that to make sure that the upcoming video is good, and of course, I'm well rested. And I gotta say, it's fun covering One Piece again, and if you guys want to see me cover the new chapters of One Piece, you can find me over at Vegapunk Labs with my friend Carp, where we do a weekly podcast talking about the new chapters and just a bunch of fun One Piece stuff with our guests. Our first guest, by the way, was Kuroto's Mystery Shack, so definitely drop by and leave us a comment on that. So drop a like on the video, get subscribed. We are on the road to 115,000 subs, so please hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.